The Amman School of Excellence in Lebanon provides education to underprivileged Lebanese, Syrian, and Palestinian refugee children. Amman means safety, and this school will secure their futures by breaking the cycle of poverty faced by refugees around the world and providing a chance for a better future. For 16,000 Rand, you can make dreams come true. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ذواتا أفنان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان تجريان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق وجنى الجنتين دان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن قاصرات الطرف لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كأنهن الياقوت والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدهامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وعبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة رافعة إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا وكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح مندود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم وكانوا يقولون إذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون أو آباؤنا الأولون قل إن الأولين والآخرين لمجموعون إلى ميقات يوم معلوم ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زكوم فمالئون منها البطون فشاربون عليه من الحميم فشاربون شرب الهيم هذا نزلهم يوم الدين نحن خلقناكم فلولا تصدقون أفرأيتم ما تمنون أأنتم تخلقونه أم نحن الخالقون نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت وما نحن بمسبوقين على أن نبدل أمثالكم وننشئكم فيما لا تعلمون ولقد علمتم النشأة الأولى فلولا تذكرون أفرأيتم ما تحرثون أأنتم تزرعونه أم نحن الزارعون لو نشاء لجعلناه حطاما فظلتم تفكهون إنا لمغرمون بل نحن محرومون فرأيتم الماء الذي تشربون أأنتم أنزلتموه من المزن أم نحن المنزلون لو نشاء جعلناه أجاجا فلولا تشكرون أفرأيتم النار التي تورون أأنتم أنشأتم شجرتها أم نحن المنشئون نحن جعلناها تذكرة ومتاعا للمقوين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون تنزيل من رب العالمين أفبهذا الحديث أنتم مدينون وتجعلون رزقكم أنكم تكذبون فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم وأنتم حينئذ تنظرون ونحن أقرب إليه منكم ولكن لا تبصرون فلولا إن كنتم غير مدينين ترجعونها إن كنتم صادقين فأما إن كان من المقربين فراح وريحان وجنة نعيم وأما إن كان من أصحاب اليمين فسلام لك من أصحاب اليمين وأما إن كان من المكذبين الضالين فنزل من حميم وتصلية جحيم إن هذا لهو حق اليقين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم صدق الله العظيم.
Sadaqallahu Mawlana al-Azim. Verily Almighty Allah speaks the truth. Jazakallah khair, shukran, and by terima kasih to Hafiz Nabil Roike for that beautiful tilawah from the glorious Quran. May Almighty Allah accept, and may Allah bless us all through the barakah of the glorious Quran. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. My dearly beloved Jamaatul Muslimin, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it gives me great pleasure indeed to present to you our speaker for today, none other than Dr. Saahier Parker, who is a Senior Research Manager in Human Science Research Council, who completed his PhD in Research Psychology. Of course, he is Junior Hamare Janab, the son of Hamare Janab Saahier Parker. Without further ado, I call upon Dr. Saahier Parker to kindly address us and talk to us with regard the fourth wave and the current status of COVID-19, inshallah. فليتفضل.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Shukran for inviting me, Imam, Musallis, committee members. It is indeed a privilege to address you this afternoon. Beyond that, it has also been a privilege of mine over the last few years to not only serve this congregation, but alongside this committee in various community projects. And it gives me personally great pride to publicly say that this mosque was in fact one of the first in the country to respond to the international emergency of COVID-19. And that really is a testament to the protective practices that this mosque, its imamat, its musallis have put in place, and the value that we've attached to life. In certain respects, in the work I do, and certainly in the media as of late, we've noted the term letting the science lead. Letting the science lead. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean for me as a Muslim, as a scientist, as someone who spends these days in this field? What does that mean to all of us as citizens of a country that's currently undergoing a tyranny as a result of this dreaded disease? This is a question that I've often grappled with, and many people have grappled with, as to how do we juxtapose the influence of science and the influence of religion. Now, thankfully, that's a question I've come to think about and wrestle with a lot in my career. And I've come to the conclusion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates, and it's up to us as human beings, as subjects of that creation, to understand the mechanisms by which that creation prolongs and extends itself. As scientists, we often use big, confusing words. We talk about the Big Bang Theory. What does that even mean? What does that even mean to me as a person, as a human being existing today? Essentially, what it is, it's centuries of scientists simply trying and attempting to translate those words, kun fayakun, be, and it shall be. That's the only job we have, is try and make sense of what Allah has put in front of us. As Muslims, we've inherited a treasure trove of scientific advancement, knowledge invested over more than 2,000 years in various traditions, various experiences, and lots of wisdom. And so to understand why science is so important today, we must just look around us. Look around at the influence of technology and how this has changed the world. More importantly, think about how this will continue to change the world as many of these young people grow up in a world that is so forever changed by COVID-19. Often these changes are double-edged. It comes with good and a bit of bad. But that's the grand challenge of science. Because Science is not just a moment of discovery. It's not just a eureka moment where we find an answer and it's stuck. That's more like politics, if you ask me. Science is a constant process of re-evaluation, of trying to compare, of trying to get the best possible solution so that we can move forward. And that obviously is dependent on the progress of scientists and the progress of science and how we as a society adapt to that. And so in following this line and how we follow the science, I began to think about how our own Muslim scientists have contributed to this modern world that we find ourselves in. And while the modern world has come a very long way since religion and science have literally been at each other's throats, there has perhaps never been a period in history more inappropriately named than the Dark Ages. Now, I'm not talking about the period between 2010 and 2021 as a result of ESCOM. It's more to do with the period between the 5th century and the 15th century, what has become to be known as the Dark Ages. Now, this is a period about 100 years before the advent of Islam, extending to about the 1400s. It's called the Dark Ages because most of Western history believed that there were no cultural or scientific advances during this time. 1,000 years. 1,000-year blank in human history that allegedly we know very little about. However, during this time, so to give you context, it's after the fall of the Roman Empire and just before the Renaissance in Europe. This is the period, arguably in my view, that the most radical transformation happened during, in the Muslim world in particularly. So after 640 AD, we'll use that calendar because it's easier for most of us to grapple with. The Islamic world expanded like never before. From the shores of Morocco, northern Africa, all the way to China, we had trade networks that expanded across the world. A highway not only for trade and for goods, but also a highway for knowledge, for technology, for education, and for books to find its way back. The expansion of the Islamic world was not only a theological one. It wasn't one only about religion. It was also one that spread trade, it spread ideas, it became very many ways a knowledge exchange, and most importantly, a period in which translation became the cornerstone for the success of the Muslim empire. Now, knowledge, the ability to read and the act of reading, is central to our Islamic traditions. It remains one of the first prophetic commandments. With that, this so-called illiterate and oral-based tradition of Islam began to shift. There was this radical transformation that happened as a result of the written word and the transformation to the written word. And what this did for us today was give us, arguably, many things, from complex retinal eye surgery to the camera on your smartphone, everything from the simplest mathematical equation to those little wingtips on the edge of an Airbus A380, for those of you that have seen these. All of these have a root in some of these very, very famous Islamic scholars. But for me, that had the luxury of studying some of these scholars over time, I think the biggest lesson in this golden age of Islam was indeed not the spread of the religion itself, but the inclusivity and the recognition that diversity from the Spanish shores to the edge of China created a better society simply because ideas were able to spread. So the extension through Europe and through China allowed for detailed collaboration, solving common problems in different contexts. We must remember that for these early travelers in the Muslim world, understanding that world was as much a religious conviction as it was a scientific one. There was no difference. Knowledge is knowledge. Didn't matter where it came from. Use it, implement it, make society better. This, in fact, led to almost a global spread of the popular practice where authors, scholars, even priests from other religions would meet with Arabian travelers and give them manuscripts, books to take back with them, with the knowledge that it will make its way back to the central Islamic lands and be studied, be translated, and be catalogued. It was the only way they could achieve eternity, was ensuring that their written word got protected. And the Muslim empire was the one that did that. At these various institutions, thousands of manuscripts were copied, they were translated, and they were studied. And the studying of these manuscripts gave them the importance to the modern world today, because that's the only way they found themselves in famous libraries like, I'm sure you've heard of the Library of Alexandria, or the Library of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. And so the importance of doing this translation work was that the Muslim empire had the accumulated knowledge of the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Persians, and the Indian empires at their fingertips. Just think of the modern-day internet on your cell phone. And we don't see any difference today in terms of the friction that currently exists between the USA, the Russians, and the Chinese for this constant control of cyberspace and outer space. That knowledge is in itself a strategic asset to any community. One of the most famous of these Islamic scholars was Al-Khwarizmi, a polymath, a genius in many areas. He developed the process by which we solve quadratic equations, and for some of these little kids around us that are still at school, you'll know the nightmare of dealing with those little x-squared equations. For the rest of us, when you want to build a garage, you need to calculate volume and size and space and depth, and the ability to do that came from Al-Khwarizmi. He developed the way in which to solve complex problems without using mathematical constants, rather using variables and giving rise to the field of algebra. The work at much of these translation centers, what became known as Bayt al-Hikmah, houses of knowledge, was to study and solve these problems in a collaborative way, understanding that different cultures speak to problems in a very, very different way. If we take a hop south to Morocco in the year 857, two sisters, females, started initially a mosque in Al-Qarawwayn, and later the world's first university, still the oldest university in the world, started by two Muslim women. Staying with the contribution of our women scientists, we think about a lady called Maryam al-Astrolabi. She was so named because she developed little devices called astrolabes. Astrolabes are similar to your cell phone applications that allow you to look at the stars and tell you which stars are where. And this was in around early 860 AD. She invented, you could say, an olden time GPS. And then, Musallis, there are the countless, hundreds and thousands of unnamed manuscripts who many scientists today believe to be written by female scholars, but time and culture and context would not allow for them to put their names on these contributions. We must remember them and understand that there's a treasure trove of history still to be discovered. Ibn al-Haytham was the first person to describe how the human eye works, the way light reflects off an object into your eye, and vision actually occurs in your brain, not in the eye. He was first to demonstrate this, and this actually resulted in how we understand the human eye today, and in very many ways how those cameras and cell phone lenses work and pick up an image. Another scholar was someone called Abbas ibn Farnas. Farnas was an astronomer, but I think for me, the most important contribution he made was looking at the birds, trying to understand how they fly. If you leave Baghdad airport, you'll see a statue of him at the exit, because his contribution to flight is gone relatively unknown by history. But each of these scholars would probably win the Nobel Prize had they been alive today. Farnas went on to describe how to develop colorless glass for those wearing spectacles. You can thank Mr. Farnas. He developed the basics for aeronautic controls, and for those of you that have in the last few years taken a flight, you'll notice aeroplanes have these little curved wingtips on the edge of them. That comes from Farnas, from studying the way eagles and other high-flying birds stay aloft for so long, simply by controlling the tips of their wings, the feathers, the singular feathers on the tips of their wings. This is in the early 800 AD. So this is way before the Wright brothers even thought about flying at Kitty Walk. There's something wrong with the history that we've absorbed, Jamaat. My favorite, however, has to be Ismail al-Jazari. Now, for those of you who've ever used a crankshaft or a rotating wheel or a motor of any kind, al-Jazari is the guy that first described how this works in converting rotary motion into linear motion. Remember, your engine, when you start it, it turns, but your car goes straight. Al-Jazari thought of the ways in which we can convert that motion into a linear motion. And that resulted in many, many things that we use today, from water pumps to vacuum machines, even robots, what we would consider automata back in the day. Robots were first considered by this genius of the Islamic world known as al-Jazari. You may then ask, what does all this have to do with me? Well, thinking about where we are today, how much of this knowledge is applicable within the context of a pandemic? Now, remember, as I began this talk, we spoke about the Muslim world and how that diversity made for a better society. We must continue to guard against the decline in the recognition of that diversity, because it is that curiosity and the sustained nature of the production and development of that knowledge that keeps us safe. During the golden age of Islam, the Muslim world experienced 5 major plagues. There were more, but 5 major plagues. The first one, for those of you that know your Islamic history, occurred during the time of our beloved Nabi in 627. The second was in 634. The third major plague was in 688, known as the sweeping plague. The fourth in 706, known as the plague of the girls, because it mostly affected females. And then the fifth major plague was in 749. What did we learn during this time? What have we learned from this period? 1, there are significant ethical and moral concerns. It's not just a health emergency. A plague, a pandemic raises ethical and moral concerns. There are financial impacts, as we've all experienced over the last while, but then there are also impacts on our livelihoods and on the way we live our lives. And then the social concerns. How do we deal with burials? How do we deal with births and deaths? How do we go about living our lives? The great scholar Ibn al-Nafis noted that the spread of viruses and illness is perhaps inappropriate today, but at the time considered to be spread by bad air. Remember, science has come a long way since then. But in response to this knowledge, the Caliphate at the time built hospitals in areas where they had clean air and good air, following the science, even if it was inaccurate at the time. Nafis, incidentally, was the first scientist in history to accurately describe the way blood moves from your body into your heart, into your lungs, back into your heart, and back into the rest of your body. It's called pulmonary circulation, still used today, and still one of the elemental discoveries by an Islamic scientist. To conclude, Musallis, in response, the early days of pandemic, even now, even in the 2020-2021 period, lockdown and quarantine were one of the key countermeasures we could use as we begin to understand the virus. Both of these notions find strong support in the Islamic world. We have been ordered, do not go where there is a plague. And if you are in a land where that plague occurs, do not leave it. In other words, take care of your own well-being, but also be aware that you take that back to where you come from. And so you have that simultaneous responsibility for yourself and for the other. That's where what we call non-pharmaceutical interventions come into play. Your sanitization, wearing of the masks, that is the most important thing we can do. When you enter the mosque, wear your mask. When you start your prayers, wear your mask. When you leave the mosque, wear your mask. I would appeal to the imamate, before you start the namaz, turn around, look at the musallis. Do not start the namaz. Do not start the namaz until everyone is safe. And that is all our responsibility, not just our beloved imam. It's all our responsibility. Look right and look left. Make sure that if you come to the masjid, you protect yourself, you protect your musallis, and you protect the people whom you go home to, your loved ones. That's the very, very least we can do. This, Jamaat, is our shared heritage, the knowledge that we've acquired over the years as a result of these brilliant scholars. This mosque in particular, and many others in Cape Town, have been instrumental in leading the fight against COVID-19. That is through advice from learned scholars, learned people in the fields of medicine, and this has guided this committee towards a rational response in a moment of uncertainty. In my work at the Human Sciences Research Council, we've conducted a survey within the immediate community. We expanded our reach to the temples, the mosques, all people within the immediate Rylands-Gatesville community. While 62% of people in that survey reported having had at least one shot of a vaccine, 3% are very staunchly anti-vaccination. That's not who I want to talk about. The remaining 30 or so % are very uncertain about the vaccine. And rightly so. There's no dishonor in saying, I'm not sure. But this reminds us about the power that we each hold in our hand when we use that phone, about the tremendous impact of fake news, about the responsibility each of us carry, and how we have to be more discerning about the things that we forward to each other. Whether it is in a group, whether you attach the words as received, it doesn't negate your responsibility to make sure that what we forward to our parents, to our children, to our staff, and to our friends is accurate, will enhance their lives, and will not place them in any single danger. The world has changed significantly. The power in our pockets in terms of these digital devices really leads the way to a lot of scientific and human progress. But it also opens us up to becoming more insular and to becoming a lot more fragmented as a result of what's going on. We are all equally susceptible. Don't think you are smart enough to overcome this fake news problem. And if you need a reminder, a couple of months ago, we were all knowing at least one person that was willing to take horse medicine to combat COVID-19. So bear that in mind. It's a very, very powerful force. We need to develop what we call a healthy skepticism. Does not matter where it comes from. Check and recheck. The flow of false information is probably the biggest obstacle in fighting COVID-19. News of the impending fourth wave in South Africa and this new Omicron variant has garnered a lot of attention, rightly so. The variant was first discovered in Botswana and a few days later identified in South Africa. That's 17 days ago. I think that is a short indication of how little we actually know about this new variant. What we do know is that it is a variant of concern, not only in sub-Saharan Africa, but across the world. Research indicates that while it may spread faster, in other words, it's more virulent, it appears to have less severe impacts compared to earlier variants of concern. That being said, Jamaat, what we have learnt from the Delta variant, not some months ago, is that mostly unvaccinated people ended up in a position where they needed to be hospitalized, and in the Western Cape in particular, only unvaccinated people ended up on ventilators. Do not believe the fake news. Do not buy in to the conspiracy theories. Please, Jamaat, go and find yourselves a vaccine. Protect yourself. For those that have had the vaccine, go and take the booster shot. Vaccines remain the best tool to protect ourselves from COVID-19 as they slow the transmission from person to person, but they also reduce the likelihood of new variants emerging. And this is the reason we need everyone who is medically and physically able to take the vaccination. Because remember, not everyone can. For those that are, which includes more than 90% of people, please, I appeal to you on Jumu'ah, from this mimbar, please go and get yourselves vaccinated. So what can we do as this cloud hangs over some of our December holidays, some of our travel plans? What can we do in the face of the fourth wave? The first thing to do in any situation like this is to stay calm and recognize we have the institutions, we have the leadership, and we have the tools medically to combat this fourth wave. We also have the knowledge. Over the last 20 or so months, everyone's wearing a mask. We have sanitizing fluids at all the doors. We've become a society more in tune to adopting non-pharmaceutical interventions. So get vaccinated. Avoid large crowds, even if people are wearing masks. That's not always possible, but as far as you can, avoid large crowds. When seeing other people, even your friends or your family members, the virus doesn't know that, your family. Wear the mask. Sheikh will tell you in every single meeting we have, we insist on that. And we are like a band of brothers. Yeah? So we practice that from the inside of this mosque out. And so when we appeal to musallis to please wear the mask, it is done so out of care and concern for yourselves, for ourselves, and our wives, our mothers, our sisters, our children at home, who we are all going home to, hopefully for a very nice lunch. More importantly, young people need to be educated, vaccinated, and taken care of. As the schools begin to close and summer events begin to happen, a lot of our young people go to these events. Protect them, educate them, make sure you know where they are and that they are fully protected. But most importantly, only share and forward news that you receive about the variants, about COVID-19, about the death and dying and illness in your community. Only share that if you are 100% sure it's going to benefit someone. You see, you are responsible for the safety, the health, and the well-being of yourselves, firstly, but also the people around you. And having done some work in this community and spoken to many of you over the last 3 or 4 months, those concerns we share. As a community, we share those concerns for each other, old and young. So I appeal to you, Jamaat. As a Muslim community, we've inherited this wealth of knowledge. Some of you may not have been aware of this before today, and I hope some of you and many of you will go home and talk about this and go and do some Google searches and find out who these great scholars are. But with that inheritance comes a responsibility on each of us sitting here to hear the message, and on each of us to take that message home. How we live our lives, how we use that knowledge, how we influence others will determine how we build our future and how we deal with that responsibility. So let us revisit some of this knowledge. Let us rediscover some of these Islamic heroes that have been forgotten. Not just our spiritual leaders. They are amazing and fantastic, and we should all learn about them. But let's learn about our scientists. Let's learn about our cultural and artistic endeavors. And let this entire inheritance of the golden age of Islam be ours. Inheritance is a wonderful thing, but it also comes with an equal responsibility on you, the inheritor. How we manage that responsibility today in a time of pandemic, in a time of COVID-19, will in every respect determine how later generations, and in fact our children, deal with future pandemics, which we are guaranteed to see. Let us not rob them of the opportunities that exist. Jamaat, I thank you for the time. I hope you carry this message forward. And with that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Takbir. Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd. Shukran, Jazakallah khair to Dr. Saahier Parker, of course the son of Saahier Parker and Auntie Rabia. Of course, Dr. Saahier Parker is a senior research manager at the Human Science Research Council. He completed his PhD in research psychology, and he also serves now currently on the committee at Masjid al-Quds. And we are proud to have people of his caliber working with us here at the Masjid. Jazakallah for touching on the beautiful aspect of the contribution of our forefathers with regard to science, and also warning us to be careful but not to panic with regard to the new variant of COVID-19, which is known as the Omicron. May Almighty Allah keep us in His divine safety, in His divine mercy and protection, inshallah. But most of all, we pray to Almighty Allah to take the entire COVID-19 completely away from planet Earth. Ameen. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Jazakallah khair, and it's definitely not the last time that we'll hear from Dr. Saahier Parker, inshallah. Just a very few announcements. I'm very pleased to say Mubarak to 4 of our youth, members of our youth in our community. The first one who they all completed the Hafiz al-Quran, and I always feel it is necessary for me to commend them and to congratulate them, because whatever career our youth pursue, let the foundation of that be Hifz al-Quran, the memorization of the Quran, because through the power and the barakah of the glorious Quran, that Allah will make them even more successful in this dunya as well as in the akhirah. Amen. And I think every parent should make a concerted effort to see that whatever sciences or aspect our children go into, make it your duty to see that your child become half his doctor, half his lawyer, half his scientist, whatever. Make the Quran your foundation, and as a community we will never ever go wrong, inshallah. Amen. So the first one I want to congratulate is one of our young daughters in the community from Greenhaven. Parents are regular and family regular musallis here at Masjid al-Quds. Brother Shabir Abdullah and his wife Nadima, congratulations for Sharfa for achieving her objective by becoming Hafiz al-Quran. Also Muhammad Ishaq Royker, the son of Kader Royker and the grandson of Abdulaziz Royker. He will be completing his Hafiz this coming Sunday, inshallah. And one of our youngsters, always in the masjid, Hafiz Rais Matthews, who learned under Hafiz Nakadin. He completed his Hifz on Friday past afternoon, and I always make him lead the Salah sometimes here, because this is the way forward that I encourage the youth to come forward and take up responsibility. So more and more youth we encourage to become Hafiz al-Quran and to take up leadership roles, inshallah. And also Mubarak to Isa Poflonker, the son of Faisal Poflonker, who also became Hafiz al-Quran. Mubarak to the families. And may this announcement serve an inspiration to all our youth to go that particular route, inshallah. Then a sad announcement is to announce the passing away of one of our very dear regular musallis, Dr. Yaqub Umar from Mabel Road. He was very passionate about the freedom and the liberation of Palestine. He was also responsible for bringing the lady activist from Palestine, Leila Khalid, to South Africa, and he always was a great activist for social justice. May Almighty Allah open the doors of maghfirah for him, and may Allah receive his soul with mercy and forgiveness, and grant him and all our deceased Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. And of course, our speaker next week will be the Honorable Sheikh Saadullah Khan. But since we had a beautiful talk by the young Dr. Saahier Parker today is the Jumu'ah of the youth. We will also have the Arabic khutbah and the Salah by one of our youth, none other than Hafiz Nabil Umar Royker. He will be doing the Arabic khutbah as well as the Salah, inshallah ta'ala. Once again to Dr. Saahier, Jazakallah for a beautiful, inspirational and educational message. May Allah grant us the hidayah and the capacity to understand and to implement, inshallah. Amen. So the main one I got from here is what we always appeal in the masjid. Before I start the salah, I always say, everyone please keep your mask on. So the same nasiha goes out to myself and everyone, including our brothers and sisters who are maybe finding themselves outside the masjid, please keep on wearing your mask properly, especially when you're in crowds. Sanitize and keep your physical social distance. May Allah, the Almighty, preserve us all and protect us. Amin. Ya Rabbal Alamin. Shukran, Jazakallah khair, and banyak terima kasih.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين. رب اختم لنا بالخير برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فيا أيها المسلمون اتقوا الله فإن الله مع المتقين. وقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا خذوا حذركم. وقال الله تعالى ولنبلونكم من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صدق الله العظيم. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لم ينزل داء إلا أنزل له شفاء. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يورد ممرض على مصح. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا طيرة وخيرها ألف أل. صدق رسول النبي الكريم. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بما فيه من الآيات والذكر الحكيم. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
اللهم صل وسلم وزد وانعم وتفضل وبارك بجلالك وكمالك على زين عبادك واشرف عبادك سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وصحبه وسلم ورضي الله تبارك وتعالى عن كل الصحابة أجمعين.
الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. فاتقوا الله يا أيها المسلمون. قال الله تعالى في شأن حبيبه: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم. اللهم بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وارض اللهم عن خلفاء الراشدين أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي، وعن أمهات المؤمنين، وعن سائر الصحابة رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من البرص والجنون والجذام ومن سيء الأسقام. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار، وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم اغفر لجميع المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. ولذكر الله أعلى وأولى وأعز وأهم وأتم وأكبر، والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله العظيم التواب الرحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليك ونسألك توبة بمغفرة إنك أنت التواب الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا إلهنا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ببركة سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Jumu'ah Mubarak, and I just want to advise you that all the exits are open on that side and at the back. Please use the various exits to go out, please. Shukran, Jazakallah khair.
The Amman School of Excellence in Lebanon provides education to underprivileged Lebanese, Syrian, and Palestinian refugee children. Amman means safety, and this school will secure their futures by breaking the cycle of poverty faced by refugees around the world and providing a chance for a better future. For 16,000 Rand, you can make dreams come true. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.